How's everyone doing today? It's your boy JJ Nomination, and today we are going to be reacting to Bucky Brooks's top 5 positional rankings. We're going to be covering 4 positions that he ended up releasing top 5 rankings for. That'll be the tight end position, the running back position, the wide receiver position, and the quarterback position. So, if you guys don't know, Bucky Brooks, of course, is one of these draft experts, but he does have a good pedigree, good background. I can't necessarily comment in terms of the track record because, let's face it, all of these guys who do this for a living, who cover like 400 to 500 prospects a year, you're bound to miss on a couple for sure. So, I try not to hold that against them unless it's like egregious. So, that's all I could really say. You know, I try not to hold it against them unless it's really out there and just a totally bad take. But, you know, we're going to go ahead and react to this right now. So, another thing I do want you guys to keep in mind, it's someone else's opinion, okay? It's not mine. I'm not saying I agree with everything he's saying. I'm not saying I disagree with everything he's saying. But it is another man's opinion. Don't, you know, give Bucky Brooks a hard time, okay? He covers like 500 players a year. You know, I really wouldn't be tripping over the argument for the number 5 versus the number 4 position. To me, it's silly. You know, like, that's why I'm not doing top 5 positional rankings, because I think it's stupid to argue over the number 4 and the number 5 guy. Like, what really separates them at the end of the day? You know, it's just for fun. So, we're going to start off with the tight ends, of course. A position in the NFL where, you know, you can find solid production here or there, but the elite guys really separate themselves from the solid, productive guys. You know what I'm saying? So let's go ahead and get started off. I'll be going from 5 to 1 so we don't spoil who is number 1. Inevitably, I don't know, man. I can't speak, okay? I'm sorry. Speech impediment. Not really, but... Number 5, Jarrett Pickney from the University of Vanderbilt. Number 4, Adam Trotman from Dayton University. Number 3, Harrison Bryant from Florida Atlantic. Number 2, Hunter Bryant from Washington. And Bucky Brooks' number 1 tight end is Cole Kmet from Notre Dame. I can't really comment much on Jarrett Pickney. You know, it's a name that I've heard before. Like, I'm familiar with, like, who that is, but I haven't really seen much of him, you know, in order to comment. So, I don't really have thoughts on him. Adam Trotman, you know, I'm always interested in the smaller school prospects. I just think they're very intriguing around this time of year because I feel like you really get to learn about some of these guys who don't play at premier programs. You know, last year it was Nasir Adderley from Delaware, you know, a very rangy free safety. I think he's bound to have a good year too. Next to Derwin James, if he can stay healthy, of course, for the Chargers. And this year it looks like it's going to be Adam Trotman from Dayton. I'm excited to see what he does, you know, him being a smaller school guy. I'm always intrigued, man, because sometimes it ain't about who you played, it's about what you do now. And you look at a guy like Khalil Mack, for example. He went to the University of Buffalo. It's not like he went to Ohio State. He didn't go to Alabama, didn't go to Clemson. He went to frickin' Buffalo, and he's one of the best defensive players, period. Not just like primarily edge rushers, like one of the best defensive players in the league, period. And Aaron Donald, you know, he didn't go to Clemson, he didn't go to Alabama, you know, he didn't go to Ohio State, he went to Pitt. You know, and Pitt's a solid school, but it ain't on the caliber of those programs. So it's not always about like the big school that you went to. You know, sometimes it's just about, okay, you're in the NFL. What are you gonna do now? You know, what's next? So I'm excited to see what Adam Trotman can do. Harrison Bryant, that's a name that I've seen before. I got to see him work a little bit at the Senior Bowl. I didn't go, but I saw, like, you know, bits and pieces of the Senior Bowl while I was out and about on my Saturday. And he looked pretty good from what I saw. He didn't really do a whole lot, but he looked good. I'm excited to see what he does at the Combine. I do think he could be the sleeper tight end of the class. I don't really know if you can call him a sleeper anymore because I think he's starting to come on people's radar. So... you know, depends on your definition of a sleeper. Hunter Bryant from Washington, you know, coming from one of the premier programs. To me, though, when it comes to tight end, it's not about your production. To me, it's about your skill set and how you will translate to the NFL, like your body and all that. Will you be acclimated to playing in the NFL? Stuff like that. Like, to me, it's not about production. You just have to have the skill. You have to be, you know, you have to have good hands, have to be consistent, just stuff like that. And I think Hunter Bryant could come in and do that. But the only thing that kind of scares me a little bit is you look at a guy like Drew Sample, right? Drew Sample, I believe, went to the same school, Washington. And, you know, we didn't really see much of what he could do in his first year at Cincinnati, but, you know, just recency bias, I guess. Washington tight ends don't have the greatest track record. And number one, Cole Kmet, kind of the, I guess you can say, undisputed number one tight end. You know, I don't think there'll be a tight end drafted in the first round. Unlike last year, we had a couple in TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant who were drafted in the first round. So I'm not really 1,000% sure. I mean, sure, you know, I'll say he's the number one tight end for now, but I really just don't know. This is a tight end class I want to dive in more to, but again, you know, it's not necessarily about your production as a tight end, because you look at a guy like George Kittle, for example. He wasn't the most productive guy when he came out of college, and he's literally one of the two best tight ends playing. And, you know, just saying, it's not always about your production. So yeah, there's the tight end list. Let me know down below, of course, how you guys feel about that. Now we move on to the running back list, and at number 5, Bucky Brooks has Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin, Cam Akers at number 4 from Florida State, J.K. Dobbins at number 3 from Ohio State, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at number 2 from LSU, and then number 1, DeAndre Swift from UGA. Now, when it comes to the running back list, Jonathan Taylor being at 5, it feels a little low. I mean, I actually did have him as like the last pick in the first round. The more that I think about it, the more I don't really think it's going to happen. I do think he'll end up being a second rounder. But, you know, obviously after the combine comes, I'll update that information. But for now, I technically have him as a first rounder. Not really. Cam Akers, I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot about him. But, you know, I'll definitely check him out. You know, it's definitely one that I'll have to check out. But let me see. J.K. Dobbins at number 3. I agree with that. You know, I think J.K. Dobbins has a good skill set. You know, I think he's an underrated rusher. And, you know, his catching ability out of the backfield is pretty good as well. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think he did a lot this season to really, you know, along with a lot of LSU players, I think did a lot, to boost their stock. And I agree with the ranking, you know, at number 2. I don't think it's too controversial. I think he's done enough to really boost himself. But to me, the clear-cut number 1 is DeAndre Swift. He is kind of what you're looking for in a running back these days. He's a 3-down guy. He can do some work out of the backfield. He, you know, is a pretty good runner between the tackles, can make guys miss. He's going to be pretty solid in pass protection as well. To me, he's a 3-down back. He's a guy that can do everything you want him to do out there and then some. And Georgia, you know, has produced some really good running backs in the NFL. So, you know, you look at Nick Chubb, he was literally one of the best running backs this year. And Sony Michel, you know, a little bit of a down year in 2019, but 2018, man, he came in and didn't miss a beat. It was a big part of their playoff run for New England. So I don't mind the running back list. You could argue for Jonathan Taylor to be number 4 or even number 3. But like I said, I kind of agree with the top 3. It's not really too outlandish to think Clyde Edwards-Helaire could be number 2. Now we get to the top 5 wide receivers. This wide receiver class is stacked. So anybody that misses the cut here, except for the unanimous 1 and 2, it really wouldn't argue against it. But at number 5, Bucky Brooks has T. Higgins from the University of Clemson. At number 4 is Laviska Shenault from Colorado. At number 3 is Henry Ruggs from Alabama. At number 2 is CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma. And number 1 is Jerry Jeudy from Alabama. I agree with 1 and 2. I pretty much agree with this whole list. You know, I would probably argue for Shenault over Ruggs, but that's just because I'm a big fan of Laviska Shenault. I actually do agree with this top 5 the way it is. I think what separates Shenault and Ruggs is the fact that Ruggs could break the 40. I don't think he will, but he definitely could. He has a good chance at it. So, you know, I'll give him that, but I do really like Laviska Shenault. I like his versatility. I like what he could bring to an NFL offense that needs some juice. Cough, cough, Green Bay Packers, hopefully. That'd be cool. But the top 3, you know, pretty standard. It's what we've been seeing across the league. Laviska Shenault, I like that somebody has him over T. Higgins. I like T. Higgins a lot, but I think Shenault, I think he's still highly regarded, but not compared to a lot of guys who are vocal about the draft process. So I'll just leave it at that. And finally, the list everyone's been waiting for, the quarterback position. Slightly controversial, maybe, depending on who you ask, but at number 5, we got Jacob Eason from Washington. At number 4, we got Jordan Love from Utah State. At number 3, we have Justin Herbert from Oregon. At number 2, we have Joe Burrow from LSU. And at number 1, we have Tua Tagovailoa from Alabama. So, of course, we'll start off with number 5, Jacob Eason. I don't know. Maybe I'm not seeing what everyone else is seeing. Maybe I'm just late to the party as usual. But some of these quarterbacks, I'm a little confused as to why Jake Fromm isn't on here, but Bucky Brooks did say like it was pretty close between his number 5 and his number 6, and that, you could flip them. But to me, Jake Fromm should have been in the top 5. I'm not the highest on Jake Fromm. I don't know how high of a ceiling he has. I also don't know how high of a ceiling Joe Burrow has, so I think that's also fair to say. But, I don't hate Jake Fromm. I just think he's a little too, predictable. I think he's safe. But I also do think he's top 5 in this class. Maybe I could be proven wrong on that, but it's just my opinion. Jordan Love at 4, I understand the ranking. I'm not really mad about it. I've seen some people kind of upset, like, why isn't he the 3rd best? Or, like, why isn't he, like, number 2? And, I don't think anyone was arguing for him to be number 1. But Jordan Love, to me, he's an intriguing prospect. I think he's a little bit of a project, though. He's definitely a guy I don't think he's ready to start right away. I think he needs some time. But he does have the raw talent. We talked about this, of course, in the Mock Draft 1.0. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing with your life? You need to go check it out. But we talked about this with Jordan Love. He does have some Carson Wentz vibes to him in terms of his play style and his ability. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's ready to play. I think he needs some coaching. I think he needs some things to be coached up on with his mechanics, and then we can assess if he's ready or not. But I think he's a little bit more of a project than the other 3. And of course, at number 3, Justin Herbert. I'm not the biggest Herbert guy. I'm going to continue to say that throughout the entire process. I'm just not. It's nothing personal. I don't know. Not the biggest fan of him physically, yes, but I don't know. It's just something missing for me. At number 2, though, Joe Burrow. This is definitely the one that's going to raise eyebrows for a lot of people. I don't really understand why it would. It's not like Tua and Joe Burrow were that far apart. People make it seem like it's Aaron Rodgers compared to, Kyle Allen. It's not that big of a difference, people. Like, I don't understand. Just like as prospects, I don't know, as pros it'll be completely different, but as prospects, I don't really see that significant of a difference. Like I said, I think arguing over number 2 and number 1, I think all that's silly. But I guess for the sake of the video, like, outside of injuries, what really concerns you about Tua? Seriously, I think that's a serious question that needs to be asked. Yes, Tua has injury concerns out the ass, out the wazoo for sure, but who has injury concerns? Carson Wentz. He's a pretty good NFL quarterback. Who else has had injuries in their career? Drew Brees. You want to know who else has had injuries in their career? Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Big Ben. Like, a lot of quarterbacks get hurt, man. A lot of players get hurt. There's no exception to the rule when it comes to who, can avoid getting injured. Everybody suffers some sort of injury at some point in their playing career. Yes, Tua has a lengthier history compared to most of his competition. But if that's your only concern, then he must be a pretty good prospect, because I haven't heard nothing about his play and why that would stop him from being good. So I guess you're off to a hot start. And then with Joe Burrow, the only real question I have about him, and I think it's a little unfair, but at the same time it's legit, is he a one-year wonder? And I think the answer is no, but You look at what he did before Joe Brady got there, and you look at what he did after Joe Brady got there. It's night and day. And the one thing I refuse to use against either of those guys is the teammates. You know, like, oh, well, they played with a bunch of 5-star prospects. Well, yeah, no shit. That's what happens when you play at LSU and Alabama. You're gonna play with 5-star prospects. So I'm not really going to hold that against either guy, but to me, if your biggest concern about Tua is injury, well, outside of that, what are you worried about with Tua? Oh, he's not going to be that great of an athlete? Okay, well, you know, Drew Brees seemed to have done pretty fine without being the best athlete, you know, and with Joe Burrow, I guess my only real concern is, you know, is this like a 1-year thing at LSU, or is he legit? I think he's legit, but is he going to be a talent elevator, or is he going to be a guy that needs talent around him to succeed? I think that's the next step in his process, and the same thing can be asked about Tua. Is he a talent elevator, or is he a guy that needs talent around him in order to succeed? I think all of those are real questions and real possibilities. But I'm not really going to nitpick between the two. I think it's a little unfair to both guys. And just because you like a guy doesn't mean you have to hate the other player. Like, just because you like Tua or Joe Burrow more than, you know, the other guy, doesn't mean you hate the other guy. You know, like, I wish fans would get out of that dumb mindset. You know, it's not really... You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a mindset that you need to be having. You know, it's okay to have your own opinion, but at the same time, like, don't be that dude who's like, oh, he doesn't have Joe Burrow at number 1. Obviously, that means he's a Joe Burrow hater and a Tua homer. And no, that's not true. So if I don't have Justin Jefferson over T. Higgins, does that make me a Clemson fan and an LSU hater? Like, come on, y'all sound ridiculous. But you know, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and let me know your thoughts. You know, these are Bucky Brooks' opinions, not mine, once again, so don't come at me for Tua being ahead of Joe Burrow, but let me know how you feel about it down below, and peace out.